let's talk about how to not react, I'll use the word, to life, to the stresses, to the triggers, to the challenges we face on a daily basis. Okay? And I'm going to give you a story, a scenario. So there's this man, he goes out, or a woman, goes out to take his dog for a walk. Okay? And it's a short walk. He takes his dog down the block, around the corner, goes around the entire block, and comes back home, right? After half an hour or so. And when he gets home, it wasn't a long walk. It was a couple of 100 meters, 200, whatever meters or so. And his dog is absolutely dog tired, okay? And the wife says, how come you are fine, but your dog is tired? And he says something very interesting. As much as I walk 200, 300, 400, 500 meters around the block, the dog did about probably 1.5 Ks. The wife said, what do you mean? Right? Because it was the kind of neighborhood where they kind of let their dogs run free, I guess, right? And as he's walking along, he says, the dog was walking with him, but any stimulus, any trigger, the dog was there. So as you know, when you take a dog for a walk, there's some other dog pops his head up over the wall and starts barking. What does the dog do? It pulls on the leash or it runs free and it barks at the dog, show who's boss, then investigates what's in the dustbin, then he pulls it over and checks what's even more, then goes to a nearby bush around the corner and lifts his, does his thing, right? And moves along and does its thing along the way. As much as the man who owns the dog walked 500 meters, the dog did about 1.5 Ks. Why? It reacts to anything and everything. Fortunately, as human beings, we may argue that we have more evolved minds as a human being, so we do not look at everything as a stress or a trigger. A dog, any other dog, is a stress or a trigger. All right, you got to go into fight, flight, show who's boss mode. Most of us, hopefully on a day-to-day basis, when we walk past people, we may just greet them, right, in a show of compassion.
Even if it's not an aggression thing, like my dog, when it sees another dog, it's like, friend.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So as much as we talk of the dogs that react, in different ways, our minds are no different. Our minds react to every kind of stimuli that is out there, okay? We take in the information. The more exciting and energizing a trigger is, the more likely we're going to get caught up in it, all right? And we have various types of triggers. We see triggers as being beautiful, triggers as being calm, cool, collected, triggers as being the road accident that happened on your way to work, and we all kind of slow down, take in that information and carry on, and it messes with our bodies and minds. And when you get to work, you're irritable, you worry about the traffic, and you get more tense and stressed. So what our minds do is it takes in information via the various senses, which is your sense of sight, your touch, your smell, everything and anything. It's constantly taking in information. Yes, it filters that information because it chooses what is exciting and what is boring. What it does with the boring information, you don't even remember. So sometimes you know this. As much as you drove and you may have noticed things on the side when you were driving, you had no clue what gears you changed, how many times you pressed your brake or clutch or accelerator. You kind of literally drove home on the things which are not stimulating in autopilot, but the rest of the world you take in. And as a result, in this day and age particularly, you and I are completely overstimulated with stimuli, right? And what happens is we get bored very easily. If you don't believe me, ask your kids, right? You don't even have to ask them. You ask them on a Friday or a Saturday afternoon, how are you feeling? I'm bored. They'll volunteer that information to you in spite of you asking them. Why? Because they're overwhelmed with stimuli. They've got 24/7. They have screen time, they have Netflix, they have YouTube, they have anything and everything under the sun. So what then the mind does, it filters out the boring stuff and it looks for the exciting stuff. And exciting stuff doesn't have to be necessarily positive, it can be absolutely negative. I spoke to someone the other day, a patient who she literally comes in and she's completely seems to be cut off from the world. And I says, what do you watch on TV? She says, yeah, I like TV. What do you watch? She says, I like to watch horror. And she seems to have watched every single horror. And I could understand it because she's at such a level of what we call, I wouldn't call the word anhedonia, like complete disinterest. She needs some level of complete horror stimulation to get her mind going. Other than that, she literally goes through life and seems blasé to what life can offer. And yes, her various circumstances have contributed. Now, how then do we deal with all this? At a very basic level, in order to deal with negative stresses, you and I need to cut off the negativity. We need to be wary of the various stimuli that comes into our brain that's messing with us. And if you think of it like things like media, and even let's take the news. On a daily basis, most of the news is negative. All right? They're not reporting on the positive stuff of it's usually all negative. What politics up to, earthquakes, violence, war. Why? Because they know that's the reason people buy newspapers. We're invigorated by the negativity. In the past, when there was a newspaper maybe once or twice a day or 3 times a day, fine, and hopefully not many of us bought the paper 3 times a day unless you were working for a company that needed that news. Nowadays, you don't get it 3 times a day at most. You are getting it every second. If you switch on your phone at 2 in the morning and you go onto Twitter, you can find the negativity somewhere in the world. In fact, each platform has its own level of negativity, it seems. Some people are living their lives far too great. Some people are living their lives far too bitter. So we feed ourselves. So at one level, cut off the negativity. Switch off from social media platforms unless they're necessary for your work, your life at some level, and that too, look at it as a business. Look at it as a necessity rather than something we use to feed our emotions. Because that, when you see it, when you hear it, it goes straight into your mind and it messes your brain up. Because what's happening is your cortisol levels are going through the roof, your adrenaline levels are going through the roof. And something interesting, sometimes we watch political debates on TV, all right, of your local or national government elections. And we all at some level care for the country you live in because you pay tax for this place, right? And as much as you pay tax, so you care about who's in power. And when they say something that really irks you, what do you think that does to your emotions and your mental well-being? It messes it up. And the problem as well is the person up there probably has more power to change things than you do. And given they have the power, you are overwhelmed and become a victim of someone that doesn't even know you exist. So at a gross level, we need to cut ourselves off from the negativity. What you're then doing is you're allowing for a huge vacuum, or not vacuum, sorry, huge conglomerate of information that is negative. You are keeping it out of the way. In this day and age, we are barraged with information. As much as you have no clue what happened the day before, you will hear about it. You know, we just have so many sources of media. Sometimes I'll be standing, as you may, in an airport queue, and there's a television set in front of you throwing the news at you. You switch on your phone and you go onto Google, it gives you all the news feeds. You switch on your laptop and there again, you're barraged with information. The emails are coming through. Your WhatsApp groups are telling you what's happening in the world. All right? You can see the earthquake in real time sometimes from your family WhatsApp group that might be happening on another side of the world. So you have to filter and block off that level of negativity.